Oh, 4 mines. Oh no. Oh, there's. Oh wow, all of those Zealots in the red. This is just getting awful for Tempest. I mean, I don't know how he can come back from this.
Oh my god.
Every exchange is everything's going in Fantasy's way. Well played by Fantasy. I mean, he's really on top of his shit with his harass, mine placement, everything. Just really well played by Fantasy here.
Yeah, Tempest did a good job, at least, you know, haltering the push, but I think Fantasy's overall harassment, overall game plan for this game really just mapped out so much better than Tempest did. And we see Tempest having problems. Like, look at the way that Fantasy's positioned. He took the harder to defend Expo earlier, and now he's going to have his upper right mineral only he's just taking now, and that mid right side. I mean, he's going to have the whole map to control, which is kind of rare in a Terran versus Protoss. But I mean, he's going to have, you know, Tempest is only on 4 bases right now, it looks like. I mean, only 4, but 5. Compared to how many Fantasy has. Well, that, yeah, the 5th just coming online, but I think the main's really, yeah, that isn't really mining there. We got 2 Stargates pumping out Arbiters, but just so many Arbiters lost. I mean, that's something that's really important in all matchups. I mean, those higher end tech units, the Science Vessels and the Defilers and the Arbiters, I mean, you just need to keep those alive because they're so gas intensive, and they, you know, it's not just, you know, you're losing minerals, but you need every single one you can get. And it looks like Fantasy's pushing out now. He's going to try and use these bridges to his advantage, just pulling out some mines. Nice EMP on the Arbiter, so yeah, that really forces Tempest to back off there. Tempest can't go for any sort of break here, and that EMP actually is really significant because I think that's going to allow him to get past the bridge, which is going to be just excellent for this push once he gets across the bridge and can fortify himself. But Tempest actually looks like, from the supply, it looks like 199, I think that says. So I mean, he's pretty much maxed out at this point, but although he has 0 resources, where I think normally at this point in the game a Protoss would start accumulating resources and throwing down a large number of gateways. So still, although both players are maxed out, you know, in TVP, Fantasy definitely has the lead at this point. And you know, I don't understand why Tempest keeps trying to like get weird and try and engage these. I mean, Fantasy is staying on his side of the map, staying on the bridge, and there's no way that Tempest is going to be able to go into this force here. And now Fantasy going for the side expansion, and I think if Tempest loses this base over here, I think this is pretty much going to be a good game.
Yeah, Tempest can't keep up with this. I mean, even with that base, I don't think he can keep up with the macro of Fantasy. Fantasy having basically the entire map. I mean, a 6-base Terran is basically like unstoppable. I mean, you can build, well, I don't know, 16, 20 factories. I mean, if he can actually fit that many factories in his base and he builds that many factories, there's pretty much nothing that Tempest will be able to do about it. But even failing that, I mean, Tempest is not even in a good position to stop a maxed out Terran push at this point.
Look at that building. He pretty much has half of the map walled off with supply depots, barracks, and like the map artifacts.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really cute play by Fantasy. I mean, these are the kind of things that I'd like to see. And now Tempest being forced, he's going to have to go across these bridges and try for a desperate push, but it's going to do nothing. I mean, he's going to get slaughtered here.
Oh my god.
He's getting EMP'd and everything. This is just awful. His entire army is basically just going to melt. I don't think he's even going to make a dent, really. Well, it looks like he is, because not a lot of vultures there. But still, not doing nearly enough damage. All of these tanks, basically, at this point, Fantasy can just unsiege and roll him over. This game is over. I mean, Fantasy really well played. Basically, one step ahead the entire time. Looks like he's going to go for a nuke. He's going to go for
double barracks. What is he doing?
I think maybe he's going to make some medics to blind
Alright, Fantasy's
observers.
a cool guy. He's not one of my favorite Terrans, but he's a cool guy. He doesn't afraid of anything. I kind of like him.
If he managed to get a nuke off, I will be really impressed. That would just be awesome. If he makes a medic, like if he makes a medic and blinds an observer and gets a nuke off because of that, I will probably shit myself. I think that's what will happen. 2 more barracks is down there. What a baller.
That sounds like either a lost hope or somebody that's already seen the game. There's no way that would happen.
I don't know, man. You never know. Like,
yeah.
why build 2 barracks, right?
I guess.
I'm just living out my fantasy right now. I mean, if he did that...
Yeah, Fantasy. Ha! I see what you did there.
I see.
Why is Tempest still in this game?
Why he has to know that some kind of embarrassment is coming for him. Like, Fantasy, he has to know that Fantasy's just fucking with him now. I want to see Fantasy draw out a heart in supply depots in the middle of the map.
Recall.
Oh, that's why. Recall. His recall really isn't gonna do shit. I mean, he could kill all the factories. It really doesn't fucking matter. Fantasy probably has 7,000 minerals saved up right now. There's just nothing Tempest can do.
Easily.
He should basically the best option for Tempest at this point is to GG before he gets nuked and embarrassed.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing I guess to point out is, I was going to say that Fantasy did an excellent job. I mean, not only the constant harass, but I mean, this is somewhat of a Protoss favored map, at least statistically, and he definitely overcame that. But, I don't think Tempest really used any map-specific strategies. I mean, even though there really isn't a lot of stuff, there's not a lot of, weird things you can do with a 3-base huge push, and Ghost coming out, and I think Tempest really has to GG once he sees Ghost attacking his recall. But I mean, Tempest really didn't use any of the map to his advantage. I mean, some people have gone carriers. I saw Stork do some excellent carrier play versus 4GG on this map, and he didn't go for a proxy gate or a 12 next or really anything. So I mean, I think even though this is a Protoss favored map, I mean, I think Fantasy easily played this, and while a recall with a bunch of zealots, and Fantasy actually didn't even have detection with the drop, and I think Fantasy is almost letting his units die so he can get off a nuke at this point, because I mean, Fantasy could nuke his entire army and still come back and win this game.
Yeah, Fantasy could probably fall asleep or go get a sandwich and come back and still win. I have no idea why Tempest is still here. I really hope he gets a nuke.
He's recalled on the factory.
He recalls again. What are you doing? Just leave the game, please. Like, he's just basically being a big nerd. Like, this reminds me of... This is like a... Okay, finally, GG Tempest. I guess he realized that he's not going to get the win. He's not going to force Fantasy to get bored and leave before him and get the I-Cup points. Like, what am I still doing here? I better leave before I get nuked. Really well played by Fantasy. Like, I'm pretty impressed by his performance. I think Tempest kind of let it happen way too much, more than Fantasy did something amazing, but still, like, well done by Fantasy to exploit every single opening that Tempest gave him.
Yeah, and I think we're really going to see, I mean, Fantasy definitely opened up. He definitely, Tempest is such a big nerd, but Fantasy, impressed everybody with that play, and let's see if he can carry it up versus Jangbi in the game 3. I mean, that's really the test. If he can defeat Jangbi, not only does he leave the group, but he defeated one of probably the biggest contenders, not just in his group, but in the MSL, and he would definitely be looking great. I mean, he can prove that, he doesn't just do it to, I don't want to call a professional gamer a mediocre, but a mediocre Protoss at best, and it looks like Fantasy, I guess this is the best outcome in my eyes, because now we're going to see 2 more TVPs after 2, so we have Fantasy versus Jangbi, and Tempest playing Iris, and boy, I hope Iris doesn't lose to Tempest.
Yeah, me too. I would really be disappointed for Iris. I mean, I like Tempest. Tempest has got a lot of flair, but he's just such a sloppy player, and he definitely needs to work on his game a lot. And it would be really sad for me to see Iris get 2-0'd, especially to a guy who's been playing for, like, he's been a pro for 6 months, and Iris has been, like... Iris was, like, playing Savior before Tempest probably even had StarCraft. So, I mean, I'm kind of a fan of the old school. I hope to see Iris do well. But really, I'm kind of looking forward to this next game, Jangbi versus Fantasy. I think if Fantasy plays like he did this game, he's got a chance to take out Jangbi. Although Fantasy didn't play perfect by any means, he definitely made some mistakes, especially earlier in the game. Sloppy defense against the Reaver, etc. I think what he was able to do once the mid game got started really made up for that, and if he can keep up that level of play, we're probably going to see a pretty good game. Although definitely don't expect Jangbi to give the kind of openings that Tempest did. Jangbi is really solid. I mean, just if you paid attention to the difference between Jangbi and Tempest, I mean, the attempted harass by Iris against Jangbi in the first game was probably just as strong as the harassment that Fantasy did in this game, but Jangbi took virtually no damage, whereas Tempest was basically running his probes around like a marathon, just going from one base to another. So, all of that mining time lost really hurt. So I'm looking forward to the game. I'd have to still give the edge to Jangbi, but it's probably going to be a good game if Fantasy can keep up this level of play.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to Fantasy Jangbi, and I guess with Tempest at the rate he gets harassed, I think we're going to see an excellent Iris versus Tempest, hopefully. I'm not sure what the map is, and I guess it doesn't matter because you guys are going to see it in a bit, but I guess that wraps this up, and stay tuned for the 3-set winners match, Fantasy versus Jangby.
Yep, that's it for me too. See you in the next game, guys.